All right, so I know this was already sort of in the works. It hasn't been a confirmed trade yet because I think it's going to take place on July 6th. But obviously, Jordan Poole's trade to the Wizards in exchange for Chris Paul going to the Warriors, it shocked a lot of people in the NBA circles. It was a bit of a curveball. No one expected Chris Paul to end up on the Warriors, especially with his stock sort of declining. And the fact that Washington were able to secure a first-round pick out of this situation alongside a guy like Jordan Poole, it was actually a crazy haul. And I think it's going to look bad in the long run for the Warriors. I think they've made a mistake here because I don't think he moves the needle for that team, for the Warriors. Yes, he could come off the bench, Chris Paul, and provide a bit of that, instant impact off the bench. He can help lead your offense. He can help run sets, etc. But the way the Warriors play, and they're a very up-tempo kind of team, I don't think Chris Paul's the right player for that particular organization because, think about it, he's a ball stopper. He likes to dribble out the shot clock. I know he's a very smart player. He's a very basketball savant. He's very, savvy with his IQ, etc. But I just think with the way we've seen his teams in the past, how he's dribbled out the clock, tried to find an assist or tried to finish off the play with a pass that leads to a score, it's not really the way that the Warriors play. They're very much a quick-moving, swing kind of team. And I think if you have Chris Paul, I know Steph Curry does dribble out a lot of shot clocks. He does like to, create his own shot. But a lot of the time, it's coming off screens, movement off the ball, Draymond initiating, dribble handoffs, etc. So whether that whole situation with Chris Paul works out with the Warriors, I don't know. But all I know is that as a Wizards fan, I'm glad we got Jordan Poole because we're going to see the best out of Jordan Poole now, I think. Similar to how Kyle Kuzma had that ascension with the Wizards this past year. Obviously, it sort of got a little bit inefficient towards the back end of the year, but I think you take the good with the bad, and I think Jordan Poole with this Wizards squad, although they might not win a lot of games, I think he'll really push his name out to show that he really did belong in that Warriors system and that they're going to rue to regret this. I think he can average about 24, 25 points per game, possibly, depending on the record of the Wizards. Put his name out into the All-Star as a smoky, you know what I mean? Like the All-Star game, whether he gets selected or not, I think he'll put up enough kind of a production, or the numbers will definitely be large enough for him to garner a mention in that particular conversation. But interested to see what you make of this whole situation and where you think the Wizards now sort of situate themselves in this situation with having Jordan Poole, and whether you think Chris Paul makes a difference at the Warriors.
Okay, so I'll begin the discussion with Chris Paul. Personally, I think it's a good move for them. I think they actually do get better with Chris Paul.
Okay.
Steph Curry, the greatest off-the-ball player I think this league's ever seen. You had Chris Paul. I do think he can adjust because we saw at Houston when he played with James Harden, it wasn't always in his hand, and he was an efficient three-point shooter. In a lot of instances, Harden would be in a pick and roll. He could adapt to that, and he could make that swing to a guy like Eric Gordon or a guy like Michael Fraser or whoever it was, So I do think Chris Paul will be able to adapt to this Warriors system. To what volume, I don't know what he's going to be putting up, but at the end of the day, this is the latest part of Chris Paul's career that we're going to see. I mean, he's an old man at this point. I think even if he comes off the bench and serves as that second unit next to a guy like Jonathan Kuminga, Moses Moody, there's enough there to where he can still get his 10 and 8 assists, I think. I do think he makes Steph Curry better. I do think he can make Klay Thompson better. I don't think they all have to be together in the same lineup for this to work. I think there can be spurts where it's Chris Paul and Steph in the backcourt, or it could be Chris Paul, Klay. I don't think he has to start, but I think if you add Chris Paul to any team, to be honest, even this Chris Paul that we're seeing now, I think they all get better. I mean, Chris Paul's one of the greatest players to ever play the game and greatest complementary players to ever play this game. And if you got two of those guys in Draymond and Chris Paul with Klay Curry, I can't see this not working out. I don't know if they will compete for a championship, but there's too much there, too many unselfish players who have a known system that does work for this to kind of fail. In terms of the Wizards getting Jordan Poole, so Jordan Poole with the Washington Wizards. So you guys got Bilal Coulibaly, Jordan Poole, Corey Kispertz, Denny. Look, Tyus Jones. I expect Jordan Poole to come in. He'll probably average 24 to 25 points per game. Put up a hell of a lot of volume. I don't think the Wizards are going to be very good, but I think it's a step in the right direction. And I think you guys got a young cornerstone who is a solidified bucket at this point. He's someone who will influence your team right away, and you're not really bidding on his upside and potential. You know what Jordan Poole brings to the table. He's a scorer, and it's a bit different to a guy like Bilal Coulibaly, who you drafted solely off upside. This guy in Jordan Poole is just like a...
I think the only concern with the Warriors that I had is the reliability of Chris Paul in the playoffs. Every year he seems to break down at this time of the year, or the crunch time, when he was at the Rockets, when they had that Game 7 against the Warriors, for the Phoenix Suns against the Bucks.
Do you reckon if he's off the bench, though, it can limit
that? Was the one thing I was going to say, was that if the fact that he might not be playing as much minutes or require as much, of the, I guess, reliability on him to be the number one option or the guy leading the offense and setting everything up and playing 30-plus minutes a night, that might be able to then allow him to have a bit more longevity through the season. And if they obviously have a deep run, it allows him to be a bit more fresher. But then again, it's Chris Paul. So even if he plays less minutes, you can't really rely on that whole situation playing out, especially the fact that he's aging. And like I said, he's had those previous issues with staying healthy. So that's the only concern I have, outside of the fact that the style of play that, the way Chris Paul plays compared to how the Warriors system is implemented. Yeah. That's the only thing I have. But in terms of, like the Jordan Poole thing, it's a low risk sort of acquisition for the Wizards, because again, we got a first round pick out of that as well. So at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, we've garnered assets. We didn't have to give up much to get Jordan Poole, and especially considering that Chris Paul wasn't in our timeline in terms of what we were trying to do with the rebuild. I think it makes sense, and I think it might bring that confidence back to Jordan Poole that we saw again in the 2022 playoffs, where he helped them win that championship and played a big part in that title run. So I'd be interested to see how all things play out from both ends. Hopefully my Wizards, start the fast track on this rebuild, and it'd be interesting to see how things play out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's really interesting, like the Warriors with Chris Paul. I mean, obviously the rivalry between Steph Curry, Chris Paul, that's been an ongoing thing. Even Draymond, I'll put up this clip now. A couple years ago, he straight up said, I do not like Chris Paul. So if he is to come back, it's weird to see all these veterans team up. Could it end badly, or will they end up being buddy-buddy? I guess we'll wait and see. But it's really weird, especially because Steph entering the league, Chris Paul was his kind of mentor, I guess, coming in out of Davidson. And then there was a bit of a rivalry there. The Warriors days, you could see that these guys, as much as Chris Paul seems like that nice guy, they didn't love each other. But now Chris Paul's career is coming to an end, and he is missing that one thing, an NBA championship. And the question still remains, do the Warriors have time, and can they compete for one last run, roll the dice? I guess we'll wait and see. But this is going to be one of the most interesting basketball seasons I think I've ever watched. Seeing Chris Paul at the Warriors, seeing Brad Beal at the Suns.
We're only scratching the surface as to what kind of moves are going to be made, and some of the chaos that's going to ensue for the rest of the free agency and the rest of the the trade deadlines when they come along as well. So looking forward to the whole circus that follows the NBA free agency and all the news that breaks all of a sudden. But love to hear you guys and what you have to say about this whole situation, whether you think the Wizards made the right call in trying to start a rebuild, getting rid of Beal and bringing in young guys, and where the Chris Paul acquisition puts the Warriors in terms of the playoff hunt, or whether they have enough in the tank to be able to go after another title run. But it'll be interesting to see, and I'd love to hear from you guys, and make sure to comment and subscribe if you haven't already. And at 1,000 subs, we have a giveaway happening for a jersey, like the one behind me, valued up to $150 from the NBA store. When you do subscribe, there is a chance for you to win one. It'll be one lucky subscriber that gets it. So be in it to win it. Make sure you are a part of our community. If you haven't already checked out our Ronnie Fields video, we did a podcast with the Chicago legend himself. So make sure to check that one out. But for now, that's all we have time for. This has been your boy Danko.
It's been Marks from the bench. Well, appreciate you guys coming on today. For now, we'll catch you guys next time.
Peace out, guys.